Pipeline hazards, or simply hazards, are events that cause the pipeline to deviate from the ideal behavior. A hazard prevents the execution of the next instruction in the following cycle to ensure that the instructions are executed and that the data is processed as intended by the programmer. The possibility of encountering hazards is the consequence of overlapping instruction execution. There are three types of hazards, namely structural, data, and control hazards. Structural hazards are caused by a combination of instructions that the hardware cannot support, usually due to a shared resource being accessed concurrently. Data hazards happen when an operand or operands of the next or latter instruction depend on the result of a previous one which is not yet finished. Control hazards, on the other hand, arise from the need to decide based on the result of a previous instruction, such as in branch instructions. Assume that the 5 instructions listed are fed into a 5-stage pipeline data path. Furthermore, assume that we are using a single memory for instructions and data. Thus, we are considering here a von Neumann processor, which is unlike the data paths we are considering in the last few lectures, which are all the Harvard type. The pipeline execution of the instructions must follow the diagram shown. However, note that at cycle 4, the load word tries to read from the data memory for saving to R1, while the subtract instruction also tries to read from the memory for the fetching of the instruction. Remember that we are considering here a shared memory for instructions and data. Thus, the load word and subtract instructions will have conflicting access to the memory which our memory model cannot support, and thus a structural hazard occurs for this von Neumann data path. To solve this, we can either increase the number of read ports to be able to read 2 different memory locations simultaneously, or we can also split the memory and use a Harvard architecture. Since our data path is already Harvard, then this specific structural hazard cannot happen anymore. For another example of structural hazard, recall that when we presented the multi-cycle MIPS implementation, we were actually able to finish the add and other R-type instructions in 4 clock cycles. We also observed that the R-type instructions still spend time in the MEM stage in our pipeline implementation, but simply passes signals without significant processing. We then ask, for an R-type instruction, can we just skip the MEM stage and perform the write back on the 4th clock cycle as shown? If we consider an instruction that happens before the R-type instruction, say a load word instruction that needs to write at the 5th clock cycle and cannot move it earlier, then there will be a structural hazard since there will be a conflict in the write ports of the register file. Thus, the answer is no. We cannot, or it's simpler if we do not skip the MEM stage for R-type instructions to avoid this structural hazard. Now, say if we have an instruction like add mem R1, R2, 16, R3, which adds the contents of register R2 with the contents of the memory at the address indicated by R3 with an offset of 16 and saves the sum to R1, will there be a structural hazard if we try to support this instruction? First, note that we will need to perform an addition operation after the fetching from the MEM stage that will likely need to have a separate pipeline stage to avoid slowing down the pipeline. If we then proceed with our usual 5-stage implementation, there will come a stage where there will be a conflict on the use of the ALU, meaning yet another structural hazard. A possible solution to this is to accept that all instructions must now have 6 pipeline stages and to add a separate ALU unit for the second access stage. Now, since MIPS does not have a add mem instruction, then this problem does not actually occur in MIPS. Why then does each structural hazard we discussed does not actually occur in our MIPS data path? Well, it is because the MIPS instruction set was specifically designed to be pipelined and to avoid structural hazards. MIPS simply stays true to its name, which stands for microprocessor without interlocked pipeline stages. Now, for data hazards, consider this series of instructions. Focusing on the first instruction, we see that the destination register is R1 and its value is written only at the rising edge at the end of the 5th clock cycle. However, the next instructions try to read the value of R1 at their ID stages even before the first instruction can write the new value. Thus, the next 3 instructions will fetch an incorrect value for R1. This is clearly an example of data hazard, and if we do nothing about this, the data will not proceed as intended. Data hazards are caused by data dependence, if you may have observed. All these instructions use register 1, although specifically the first one uses it as a destination, while the following ones use it as a source, including the last one. However, not all data dependencies cause or result in data hazards. For the last instruction shown, there is no data hazard since the register fetch happens after the register write of the load word. Next, we show examples of control hazards, which are also called branch hazards. In the data path we just discussed, the branch is evaluated at the 3rd clock cycle, and the PC gets the branch target address at the end of the 3rd clock cycle. In other words, the PC can only start with the branch target value at the 4th clock cycle relative to the start of the branch instruction. The branch instruction introduces a control hazard since we do not know which instructions to execute next until the branch is evaluated completely. Should the next 3 subtract instructions be executed and pushed into the pipeline, or the 3 add instructions starting from the branch target address? These are the dilemmas introduced by hazards. We now have an idea of what hazards are and how they occur. The next step is to determine what to do with these hazards or give solutions so that the pipeline data path and the program can proceed as intended by the programmer. The solutions can be divided into software and hardware solutions. Starting with software solutions, we can reorder the instructions to avoid hazards. This is a software solution as it tries to modify the assembly program instead of the processor hardware. The reordering can be done manually by the programmer or by the assembler while ensuring that the program operation is not affected. However, this is not always feasible or cannot eliminate all possible hazards that can happen, especially since most programs have closely intertwined dependencies and usage of registers. A fail-safe software solution is to insert NOPs or no operation instructions to remove hazards. Again, this can be done either manually by the programmer and/or automatically by the assembler. Although inserting NOPs can always remove hazards, it comes at the cost of wasted clock cycles and thus reduced performance. This also takes up space in the instruction memory, and the more data hazards or hazards present, the more NOPs need to be inserted. For example, consider this program where we have to insert NOPs as needed to remove hazards. The first step is to identify where the hazards are. We will not anymore consider structural hazards as they are already eliminated with our instruction set choice and pipeline data path implementation approach. First, there is a data hazard at BEQ due to R1. In the code shown, the BEQ will try to fetch R1 even before the load word is finished writing it with the correct value. There is also a control hazard automatically because of the presence of the branch instruction. To solve this, we note that the load word writes into R1 at the end of its 5th clock cycle. We must then only allow the ID, where the operands are fetched, of the BEQ to happen after this. Thus, we need to insert 3 no-ops as shown. If there was one other instruction between the load word and the BEQ instructions that does not use R1, then we'll just need to insert 2 no-ops. Next, note that the branch will finish only after 3 clock cycles. Thus, to ensure that we will not execute the 3rd instruction, the ADI R3 R01 instruction unintentionally if we were to branch, then we can insert two no-ops such that the next true IF happens after the third stage of the BEQ instruction. In this manner, even if we were to branch or not, then no unwanted instruction will be executed. The next set of solutions to pipeline hazards are hardware-based. The first is stalling the pipeline. Stalling has a similar effect as inserting no-ops, but is detected on the fly by the hardware. A stalled pipeline is not allowed to proceed. Since it is not able to move, the pipeline must also not accept a new instruction. Thus, stalling still wastes clock cycles but does not occupy space in memory. Having a stalling hardware also removes the problem of the programmer or the assembler missing or failing to detect a hazard. The second hardware-based solution is called forwarding, which is a more elegant solution to data hazards. In forwarding, data is passed or forwarded for use of the next instruction even before being written into the destination register or memory address. This process is also performed on the fly. The last hardware solution we'll discuss is called branch prediction. Branch prediction tries to reduce the number of wasted clock cycles because of branches. We'll discuss more details on branch prediction on a later slide. Now, how does forwarding actually work? Consider these three instructions. We already know that there is a data hazard and the subtract and or instructions reads R1 from the register file before the add instruction writes into it. However, note that the sum, the value to be written to R1, is already generated sometime within the exit stage of the add instruction and eventually reaches the write back stage where it is written into the register file. For the sum to reach the write back stage, the sum or the correct R1 value is saved in the XMM register for passing. The sum is also saved into the mem write back pipeline register for passing. Thus, we can use the already available value of R1 from the pipeline registers before the actual writing to R1. For the subtract operation, we can quote-unquote forward the value from the XMM register instead of using the old value fetched from the ID stage. There must then be a new multiplexer for the ALU input to support this behavior. For the OR instruction, it can instead use or forward the value from the mem write back register as the ALU input. With forwarding in place, we have eliminated the need to stall or insert no-ops and waste clock cycles, at least in this example. However, this comes at the cost of hardware complexity. However, can forwarding solve all data hazards? To answer that, we will consider more examples. We already know that we can forward from an add instruction to the following two instructions, the one shown in blue. However, what happens when the third or fourth instructions following the add use the result R1? For the last instruction in the figure, we do not actually need to forward anything since the register fetch or access already happens after the register write back. For the fourth instruction, the AND instruction, if we follow the same pattern, then we'll have to get the result from here and pass it to the ALU input in the exit stage. However, there is actually no more pipeline register at the end of the write back stage. Thus, we can't do the same approach. What we can do instead is go back in time a little and get data from the mem write back pipeline register, but forward it not to the ALU, but to the IDXE pipeline register, bypassing the fetch data from the register file. Note that forwarding is a combinational process and therefore signal must only flow within the same clock cycle. What then happens if we forward from a load word instruction instead? Let's rule out the cases where we won't need forwarding first. In the example shown, the ID of the last instruction, the AND instruction, happens after the write back stage of the load word. Thus, the AND instruction can safely proceed without forwarding. Now, note that the result of an add instruction, which we considered previously, is generated within the EXE stage. However, for load words, the valid data is fetched from the data memory at the middle of the mem stage. Thus, we only have the mem write back pipeline register as the only pipeline register from which we can get the data to be forwarded. In this case, we can forward to the ALU input of an instruction that is 2 places away, which is the sub instruction in our example. We can also forward from the mem write back pipeline register to the IDEXE pipeline register for instructions that are 3 places away, or the OR instruction in our example. Now, how about the instruction directly following the load? We cannot delay the forwarding to a stage after the EXE stage since the addition happens after the EXE stage. Thus, the only option we have for forwarding is to forward directly from the mem stage to the EXE stage of the next instruction at the same clock cycle. This is logically possible, but will require 1 clock cycle to accommodate the total delay from the memory access and the ALU execution, which will most likely require the clock to be much slower. Thus, in a case like this where the loaded data is used right ahead, our best option is to reorder the instructions or put some instruction in between the load word and the instruction using its result. However, if reordering is not possible, then stalling or inserting no-ops may be the better option so that the whole pipeline does not suffer with a slower clock even without this data hazard happening. Say we go with the stalling option and that we are just at the 3rd clock cycle. The load word is at the EXE stage, the add is being decoded at the ID stage, while the sub instruction is being fetched at the IF stage. During this clock cycle, as the add instruction is being decoded, the control unit notices that the add tries to read from R1, which is the destination register of a load word instruction currently at the EXE stage. With this, the control unit will stall or not allow the add instruction to proceed. However, when stalling, all newer instructions must be stalled as well. Thus, both the add and sub instructions must be stalled in this case. A pipeline stall is also called a bubble. Continuing the operation, at the 4th clock cycle, the load word proceeds to the mem stage, but the add and sub instructions remain in the ID and IF stages respectively. Note also that no new instruction is fetched as the sub instruction still occupies the IF stage. At the 5th clock cycle, the OR instruction is fetched in the IF stage. We can then forward the fetched data from the mem write back pipeline register to the ALU input for the add instruction. We can also forward to the IDEXE pipeline register for the use of the sub instruction. The operation proceeds normally for the next clock cycles. Since the ID stages of the OR and the AND instructions now happen after the write back stage of the load word, partially because of the added stall, then no forwarding is needed anymore. In this example, we employed both forwarding and stalling, and thus we have demonstrated that we can use different solutions to hazards at the same time. Now, while forwarding handles most problems related to data hazards, forwarding still does not solve the problem of control or branch hazards. For branch hazards, we have branch prediction, which is a hardware-based solution that is done on the fly or at runtime. Every time the prediction is correct, no clock cycle is wasted. However, when the prediction is wrong, then the pipeline must be quote-unquote flushed. And by flush, we mean to discard the incorrectly assumed instructions. If this is done, then clock cycles are wasted. To flush an instruction, we can deassert all write-enable control signals that is passed to effectively convert the incorrect instruction into a no-op. Now, there are different approaches to branch prediction. The simplest, however, is to assume that the branch will not be taken. In this approach, the PC assumes the PC plus 4 values while the branch is still being evaluated. There is no additional hardware for prediction since PC plus 4 values are always available with the normal hardware. Again, no clock cycle will be wasted if the prediction or the assumption is correct. Let's see how this assume branch not taken scheme works. Consider the code shown. If the branch is taken, then we need to go back to the green instructions. However, if the prediction is correct, that is, we don't need to branch, then we need to perform the orange instructions. As shown in the diagram, the add and the OR instructions following the BNE instruction are executed even while the branch is being evaluated at the excess stage since we are assuming that the branch is not taken. If after the evaluation, the branch indeed must not be taken, then no clock cycles is wasted since the add and OR instructions have already been started. On the other hand, if the branch must be taken, then the two instructions must be flushed and 2 clock cycles are wasted. 2 clock cycles are wasted because the branch is evaluated at the 3rd clock cycle. Thus, more clock cycles will be wasted if the PC is updated at a later clock cycle. For example, if the PC is updated at the 4th clock cycle instead of the 3rd clock cycle. The opposite must also be true. To reduce the performance cost of wrong predictions, then we must finish the branches earlier. The earliest that this can be done is at the ID stage, since we still don't know that the instruction is a branch at the IF stage. However, this will require a dedicated comparator at the ID stage and may require the use of a slower clock if the added delay of the register file read and the comparator becomes the longest delay in the data path. The advantage of the assume branch not taken approach is its simplicity in terms of hardware implementation. However, it turns out that assuming that the branch is not taken gives poor prediction results that assuming otherwise, or that the branch must be taken, is a better option most of the time. For example, taking the branch is more common in loops. This assume branch taken approach is also not as simple as it sounds. In an assume branch taken scheme, the controller must remember both the address of the branch instruction and the address of the branch target. This enables the PC to assume or give the value of the branch target while the instruction is still at its 2nd clock cycle or just the ID stage. The assume branch taken scheme is also considered a static prediction, just like when assuming that the branch is not taken, since the prediction does not change, meaning you either always assume that the branch is not taken or always assume that the branch is taken. A different approach is to use what we call dynamic branch prediction, where the assumption or prediction changes automatically and on the fly based on preset rules like predicting based on the success of recent guesses. This approach requires some memory to remember the result of previous guesses. The approach may also store a table of branch target addresses for faster processing. An example of a dynamic branch prediction scheme is where you change prediction or guess every after 2 consecutive wrong guesses. If you have a loop that consecutively branches and does not take the branch only when exiting the loop, then right after exiting, you will still predict or assume that the next branch will be taken since you have just made a wrong guess once. This makes it smoother to enter another looping portion of the program. To summarize, we have identified the following. First, pipelining allows instruction-level parallelism. Next, pipelining is a multi-cycle operation with different instructions occupying or utilizing the different pipeline stages at each clock cycle. Pipeline registers are put or added in between pipeline stages. Some control signals for a pipeline data path must be delayed through the pipeline registers as well. The ideal CPI for a pipeline data path is 1 cycle per instruction. Pipelining introduces structural, data, and control hazards. And lastly, solutions to hazards include software-based approaches such as reordering of instructions and inserting no-ops, while hardware-based approaches include stalling, forwarding, and branch prediction. And that's it for this lecture. Thank you very much.